This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk all about the PlayStation State of Play, Nintendo suing Palworld for copyright infringement, a new Batman game potentially coming from Rocksteady, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 51. I am your host, the man who will be the first fat white female protagonist in Ghost 3, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has given up being exclusive to Ubisoft Connect and is coming to Steam on day one, Justin, better known as I Am Zericon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been pretty good. So Saturday, I finally did something I have been wanting to do for quite a long while, and that is, I had a Lord of the Rings trilogy marathon. So I it's something I've wanted to do for a long while, but I did not have possession of my DVDs. But a couple months ago, I bought the Blu-rays and I was ready, but things were just so busy that I did not have time. So last Saturday I was ready. I said, that's great. Had popcorn ready, bought some pizza. And so I just all day, starting around 9-ish, 9 in the morning. And then probably around 10 in the evening was when everything was over. Yeah, it definitely was a good time. Definitely should have probably slept a little bit more the night before because I was kind of worn out by the time the movies were over, but it definitely was good because the movies are just incredible. Great trilogy. One thing I will say though is while there were some things about the Blu-ray version, I guess the enhancements that were made to the quality that I liked, there were a couple things that just seemed a little bit off to me, particularly with the reds. Mainly in Mordor, it just looked kind of off to me. And then like in Return of the King at the beginning with Smeagol and Deagle, the greens looked very nice for the most part, but then there were a couple places where the greens just looked too, I guess, saturated. It just seemed kind of weird to me. But other than that though, I thought that the remasters were very well done. Yeah.
Nice. Now is that, I'm assuming extended versions?
Yes.
And then also, just standard Blu-ray or 4K?
Standard. I don't have any sort of 4K.
That's what I thought. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's been so long since I've watched DVD versions of those that I don't even really remember the differences. Like, we've had the Blu-ray versions, well, literally since they came out, I think. I think we bought them on the day they came out. But yeah, anyway. Cool. Good stuff. Well, my week has been interesting in different ways. Just kind of had some busy stuff throughout the week between the pest control treatment that we had last week, which ended up being a little... I mean, not exactly eventful. Like, it was actually pretty simple, other than the fact that we had to be out of the house for 3 hours, including all the pets. But, yeah. Don't need to say a whole lot about that. Trying to think what else we had going on. Finally got my next comparison completed so that I could put that up. And so I was able to get that all done. It wasn't terribly hard to do, mostly just because it's shorter gameplay. So I got that done, and just kind of various things. I've been supposed to get this certification for my job. That's it's a certification where there's no sort of like study guide for the exam. There's the only way that you can get information on what's actually on the exam is either to pay for courses that cover that information, or you pay for like a 12-week course that's $1,300. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. Especially because I'm not even even if my job would reimburse me for it, which I don't know if they would or not, it's just like, that's just too much. Like the last time I had to take an exam for a certification, they had a study guide that you could get free of charge. And it was something that I just spent like 6 months or so studying for. And then I took the exam. I was able to pass and got my certification. This one, I started studying for it based off of essentially no information other than these are 2 books we recommend if you don't want to pay for our 12-week course. Other than reading one of those books entirely and about half of the other book, I really didn't know what was going to be on the exam. I just basically had no real idea. The most they would give you is an extremely basic outline. When I say extremely basic, I mean it was like the 4 main subjects, and that was it. So it's like, okay, I'll read these books as much as I can, and the exam is $475, and that's for the exam itself plus the proctor fee, for the person who sits there while you take the exam, and then the fee for the actual certificate. And the way that they have it working at my job is that if you pass the exam, you can get reimbursed for that fully. If you don't pass, you don't get reimbursed. So I was originally supposed to try and get it last year, but because an extension was given for a different certification that my coworkers had to get, and they were given until the end of this year to do it, they gave me an extension on mine as well, which gave me more time to study. In the end, I feel like the exam was probably easier than the previous one I took. Just because of how it was written. Like the exam I took for my other certification, which I'll just say it's a certified information professional, is the one that I got previously. That one, the exam, the way that they wrote the questions, it's like they pulled out a thesaurus and they just wrote out. They tried to make the questions as confusing and convoluted as possible, just by using language that nobody uses. Like nobody talks like that in real life, and they're giving these scenarios and they're saying things that it's like, this is not a real. I mean, even if the situation itself is real, the way it's explained is not true to life at all. And so that was the most complicated thing about that exam. This one, it's not like that. The questions were written very straightforwardly with more plain language. There was a number of questions that I got wrong that I feel like I could have argued that my point was correct. But really, the exam kind of covered more. It covered a lot of stuff that I've learned practically from being in this field, but then also some of the stuff that I learned from the books, and a lot of the stuff that I actually learned from the study materials for my previous exam. So now I didn't do great on the exam, but I got a passing grade, and that's really what matters, because this thing had been hanging over my head for the past year and a half, having no idea how I would do on the exam simply because I had no idea what to expect on the exam. But, I passed it, and thankfully I was able to get a level higher than I was originally required to get, because the original requirement was based off of having less experience in the field. But because I have over 2 years of experience in the field, and got the score that I did, I was able to get the higher level, which is good. So that worked out. But otherwise, it's just been pretty normal stuff. We're leading music this week at church, so I just finished getting songs picked out today and practicing on Saturday and playing on Sunday. Just doing 1 week, though, so it's probably going to start being 1 week a month. Or, we'll rotate. What we're doing is our main guy who leads most of the time, he's going to lead 3 weeks a month, and then the 4th week, either myself or one of the other guys who typically will play an instrument will lead. instead. So I think the other guy is going to be leading next month at the end of the month, and then it'll rotate back to me in November and so on and so forth. So anyway, good stuff. What have you been playing this past week?
So I played some more Katana Zero, and I was very confused until I realized that the game ends on a cliffhanger. And it ends on such a cliffhanger that I honestly said, "Wait, that's literally it. That's how it ends. You leave us like that?" And yeah, I mean, I was very confused. I mean, there were some parts of the story that were tied up, and one thing that actually, well, I think I can say this without spoiling anything, is that the main character Zero, he constantly has flashbacks to a moment in his past, and as you play through the game, more and more of it is uncovered, and so you see sort of like a full sequence play out. So I like that part. I thought that was done very well. But I'm just really confused as to why they ended the game the way they did. It just, I mean, I do understand, it sort of gets you hyped for the next entry, which apparently or at least there was supposed to be some DLC that expands upon the world some more and answers some more questions, because there are other characters that you really don't know anything about them, and you're wondering, who are they? Why are they here? What are they doing? And there is supposed to be a sequel as well in the development, but the DLC never came out, and the game, I think, is at least 5 years old, and the DLC was supposed to come out maybe at least a couple years ago, so not sure what's happening there. But overall, though, I enjoyed the time with the game. It's not long. I finished it probably around just under 6 hours. I mean, granted, I died a whole lot at some points, but it's definitely an enjoyable game in that aspect. And if DLC does eventually come out or a sequel, I will definitely keep my eye on that in the future.
Nice.
Also played some more Batman Arkham City. I originally was going to play Arkham Knight because I wanted to get some gameplay footage for a video, but I said to myself, you know what? I'd never finished City. I'm right near the end, so I just go ahead and do that. So I went in, actually I didn't realize that I was literally going to be at the very end of the game. So went in there, of course, there's the fight against Clayface. I think because I haven't played the game in a while, and also I switched back some controllers I was using before, and that kind of messed me up during the fight. So the first half of the fight, I barely got through without dying. The second half, when you're actually facing the different little Clayface minions that he summons, I died to that twice, but then I was like, okay, yeah, I think I should be parrying more or countering more than I have been, so that got me through that. But yeah, I mean, not really much to say there. Arkham City is a great game, and there's a reason why people love it so much. But the main game that I've been playing, which is something that I've been discussing quite a bit, is Kingdom Hearts Rechain of Memories. And wow, I originally, when I first started Riku's story, I thought this is going to be such a pain to get through because of his preset decks. However, once I actually obtained Dark Mode and leveled it up some more, I realized this is so broken. Because several bosses, Lexius, when I first fought him, I thought, man, I remember I had a hard time with him on the Game Boy Advance version. I'm going to have a hard time here. I beat him my first time, and I curb stomped him essentially because I used Dark Mode, and then every time I thought he was going to use some sort of sleight, I said, oh, I'm just going to make a sleight of my own, and I just floored him. It was ridiculous. And then also later on, I fought Dark Riku. This is the first fight in the clip, but when I fought him again in Twilight Town, I thought this is going to be very painful because of the fact that he has more powerful sleights now, and I remember him being very difficult in the Game Boy Advance version. I had an easier time with him in that fight than I did in this fight here, and he nearly wiped me out twice in the first fight, and so I was very surprised to how I came out through that effortlessly. Um, and definitely one thing I will also say is because Riku doesn't have all the Disney stories that Sora does, you're gonna be clearing each floor pretty quickly. That's something that I have realized, and so like right now I'm actually at the very end of the game, uh, right before I'm gonna face Ansem. But what I'm pretty much doing right now is just leveling up everything and trying to get all the achievements I can for Riku before I finish things up, and then go back to Sora's story just so I can get the last few cards that are unlocked, because they only are unlocked once you finish Riku's story. So
Gotcha.
by next week, I will definitely have the game completely finished, and I will put this in the back of my mind. And I may or may not take a break from Kingdom Hearts. I know that eventually I'll start 2, but I don't know. I don't know what I'll do there. But yeah, that's what I've been playing this week.
Okay, so we need to back up. You've never finished Arkham City, or just never finished the PC version?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I never played the PC version.
Gotcha. Okay.
I originally played the game on the Wii U.
Of course.
And I finished that there. Got the PC version and just like played it on and off here and there, but I never finished it there.
Gotcha. That makes much more sense. Because I was like, I'm positive you said that you finished it before, unless I missed something, and I was positive that it was the Wii U as well. Because I mean, that's where I played it first. Because I played Arkham Asylum on PC, and then one of the things that like really drove me to get a Wii U when I did, which was like, I don't know, a couple months after it launched, was Arkham City Armored Edition. And I thought that they used the gamepad so well. So well for the Wii U version. I imagine going back to it, it would be painful, the frame rate and everything. But, gosh, that gamepad was just used so perfectly. And then, of course, when they did Arkham Origins, it was exceedingly bare bones. And it was just like, man, this is disappointing how little they did with this, because it was just so expertly done. I think the only thing I didn't like was using motion controls to move the Batarang or to fly or to glide.
Yeah.
Like I hated that, but everything else I just thought was fantastic. But, yeah, and good to hear that you're almost done with Rechain of Memories. So yeah, good stuff. In terms of what I've been playing, there's actually only a few games this week, apart from playing Lego games and Mario Party with the kids, which I don't have footage for either of those things. But of course, I did play a little bit of Outer Wilds just to re-record the Steam Deck portion, and that went well. Apart from, I did have to change the camera settings a few times during the recording, but I figured rather than restarting it each time, I would just very simply pause, change the camera settings. So there's like a couple switches in there just to try to get it just right. And even then, it still wasn't quite right, but it was the best it was going to get, because there was just nothing further I could do with it. So got that recorded so that I could get that comparison up. And I'm actually kind of glad that I did end up doing this one first, because originally I had wanted to do Outer Worlds and then Outer Wilds, and that's exactly the order I ended up doing, albeit with a big gap in between. But apart from that, I did play a little bit of Elden Ring. I didn't play very much. I basically just played, I got to, I can't remember the name. Well, it's the area I said I was in before. And I fought the Magma Worm Makar, and unfortunately, the footage here I have is not my winning battle, because I forgot to actually start recording when I went into the last time I fought him and beat him. So this is just basically a couple failed attempts in this footage. But I beat him and then just was like progressing beyond that into the next area. And I fought like this big lightning dragon thing. I can't remember what it was called, out in like the open world, and I got him down to about half health, and then he ran away, and like I progressed forward and I got to this area where there's um two like giant guys, one of which reminds me of Gao from or Go or whatever his name is from Dark Souls, with the giant bow that uses to shoot. Because yeah, he had a giant bow, and I got skewered multiple times by the arrows trying to get past him. I didn't play beyond that. It wasn't like I was frustrated. It was more like I stopped playing. But the main reason I stopped playing was because God of War Ragnarok came out. So there's the footage that's being played here is recorded on the Steam Deck, because it turns out, as many people will already know by the time you're watching / listening to this, it is actually playable on the Steam Deck. The PlayStation Network requirement is not actually requirement at all. Sony basically just lied. So it is playable on the Steam Deck. The performance is mixed. So it seems like it is. I mean, like I have it set. I messed around with the settings a lot. Tried using upscaling and stuff, or various anti-aliasing settings to try and get like a solid 40 frames per second. Because basically my goal was just to get, if possible, get as close to a consistent 40 frames per second as possible, because that's better than the PS4 does, because the PS4 only does 30. But obviously not as good as 60. So on the Steam Deck by itself, that was basically just how it was. And so a lot of the times I'm getting 40. But then it seems like the other frame rate I get is 27 frames per second. And it's just like, that's basically the two things. It's either 40 or 27. And I've tried various things to get it to work. I've tried changing to like a balanced graphical setting, tried changing it to performance and ultra performance, and it's like, okay, I changed those settings. It would improve. I mean, it would lower the visuals, and it would maybe improve the frame rate for a tiny bit, but then it would just go back to being bad. I mean, it would just go back to being exactly the same. So I ended up just opting more for close to, I mean, like using temporal anti-aliasing and doing closer to native in terms of the visuals. And I don't know, I keep messing with the settings, keep trying to get more consistent, but there just doesn't seem to be any way to get like an actual consistent 40 frames per second on the Steam Deck. So the footage here that's being shown, this was one of the early boss fights, and I think this fight was like 40 the whole time, so it was great. Very comfortable. And I don't have the footage up at the moment. I'll add it into the final video, but the PC performance, oh man, excellent across the board. So PC, I have it on ultra settings, all ultra settings, no upscaling, no DLSS, nothing like that. Just, I think I'm using like, I'm using some type of anti-aliasing. I don't remember which one I'm using specifically, but like it looks incredible. And the lowest I'm getting on frame rate in general is around like 84 frames per second, which is fantastic. Fantastic. The only real exception to that is when there is an area you go into to load to like different worlds, and it's basically like a loading screen that you are walking around. But for some reason there it drops into the 40s just in that section. But there's no enemies. It's literally you're just walking around in circles. You are the loading screen. But I mean, anytime you're doing this, it's not like you're just standing on an elevator waiting for stuff to happen. There's story stuff, being communicated to you and things like that. I mean, it's not like a total waste of time. It just sometimes takes a little bit, even on an SSD. But yeah, the visuals and frame rate are just excellent. I'm so happy with it. I mean, I knew it was going to be good because God of War 2018 was the same, and since the port was done by the same studio, I can't remember the name of them, but it's exactly the same studio that did the port for God of War 2018, and so it's just like it's an excellent port. And I mean, even though the Steam Deck kind of goes back and forth, I'm still happy overall with it. I just wish, even if I could just get a solid 30 like all the time, that would be fine. I'd rather just have that solid 40, even if I had to lower some settings to get it, but it just doesn't seem to be possible to maintain 40 at all times. But yeah, so PC performance is so good, and I'm having a great time with this game. I'm basically playing it about 50-50 between Steam Deck and PC, because Steam Deck is like my when I take a break, or when I'm like on lunch, occasionally, like if we have a show going on, sometimes I'll play on the Steam Deck. More often than not, at those times I'll just play on my PC though, because it's like I'm in the room either way. It doesn't make a huge difference from that standpoint, and it looks and runs way better on my desktop. So, but yeah, I'm absolutely loving the game. This is one of those things where the rage bait YouTubers really do a disservice to the game. Now, I understand it's not for everybody. Some people really don't like the change in the style of gameplay for 2018 and Ragnarok versus what the previous God of War games were, and like I totally understand that. That's fine. It is very, very different. But in terms of the actual, like, the combat and everything, and the Metroidvania elements, because it is very much a Metroidvania, it's just really good. And the other thing is, I think that most people who say that you spend more time, like, just it's like more of a walking simulator with little bits of combat here and there, I think that those people must just only be doing the main story, because there's plenty more content besides that, and there's a lot of like really challenging boss fights. And yeah, generally you don't have like the really big bosses like you did in the old God of War games. I think that there are a lot more of them in this one than there were in 2018, but still, just like, this game is so good, just like 2018 was. I'm really happy with it. Even though starting over was never ideal, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be, because I've just been having such a good time with it. I'm nowhere near where I left off in the PS4 version of the game. I still have quite a ways to go. I mean, like, I can't remember all the story elements that have to happen, and I don't remember how much time I spent on specifically like side stuff versus story. I just remember roughly where I was in the story when I stopped on PS4, which I think is pretty close to the end of the story. But like, I know that I haven't done any of most of the optional bosses yet, that I had already beaten before, and I know that I still had a bunch of them left anyway on the PS4 version, so either way I'm going to have to redo a lot. But I will say, in general, at least when I've been playing on my desktop specifically, having the better performance has made a big difference in how I've done on boss fights. I've typically been able to get through them a lot faster than I did previously. I definitely have had to change up my gameplay though a little bit, because one thing I was never good at with 2018 and Ragnarok subsequently was actually using my shield to block instead of just trying to parry things. And so, like, I've kind of been realizing more recently, maybe I should just actually try blocking the attacks that are blockable, because that kind of, it does work. That's why, it's like there's certain attacks that, yes, you have to either parry or dodge. And then there's a bunch of attacks that are like, you can block that. You can block it, and it's not going to do any real damage to you. And I think that, um, I mean, unlike like in what you call it, Dark Souls and Elden Ring, you know, when you block attacks, you don't, it doesn't like drain stamina or anything, so you don't have to deal with that aspect. Granted, you're also supposed to be a god, so it's like there's that aspect that, you know, makes it, from a lore standpoint, makes it make more sense that he doesn't run out of stamina. But anyway, all that being said, I'm loving this game. It's probably just about the only thing I'm going to play. Like, I really want to play some more Elden Ring 2, but I'm just so into this game and the fact that I can play it both on my computer, which is, you know, best place to play, of course, at all times, or I can play on my Steam Deck. And even though there are definitely times where the performance leaves a lot to be desired, and it becomes more of a problem, in general, it's not a big problem, and I have enough skill, as unskilled as I am, to where usually I can work with the lower frame rate when I have to. It's not ideal, and that's the reason why whenever I have the choice, I always choose to play on my desktop. But like, if I'm taking a break during a work day, I'm not going to switch out the cables so that I can boot up the game for, you know, 5 minutes or whatever, and then have to switch everything back. And then on top of that, you know, I can't just suspend the game for a little bit, whereas Steam Deck, I can suspend the game as long as I need to, and then I can just come back to it and play some more. But one thing I do want to note, one final thing with this, I came across this weird thing. I don't know if it's a glitch or if it's something specifically tied to how Sony implemented the online stuff, but like last Friday when I went into the office, you know, after having played a bit on Steam Deck, so I started it up at home on my home network, and because I had played a little bit the day before during my breaks, and when I started it up on my home network, I mean, that was just to sync my save over from PC before I went to work, because at work, I can't access Steam networks unless I'm just using like a mobile hotspot that I make with my phone, connecting to mobile data. So I get the save transferred over. Then when I go to work, I boot it up before my shift starts, just to make sure everything's fine. And when I start it up, it tries to connect to the Steam servers, and then the buttons don't work. And it's just like, I can't do anything. And so like I'm trying restarting the Steam Deck. I'm trying to connect to the mobile hotspot to see if I can connect. It's like nothing's working. And it's just the buttons aren't working. I'm looking on Steam forums. I'm looking on, you know, various other things, and I'm just not finding anything to help me with this. And so I have no idea what's going on. And it's very frustrating. So ultimately what I figured out was that if I closed out the game first, connected to the game, or you know, connected to the Steam servers using my hotspot, and then I turned it off, and then I disconnected from the internet after that, just went offline on my Steam Deck. From there on, I didn't have any problems. Like I could play the game, I could continue playing the game. And initially I was like sitting at my desk, and occasionally I would just turn it on, move my character a little bit so that it would be less likely to have that issue come up again. And just like I wasn't even playing. I was literally just moving my character for 2 seconds, turn it back off. And I did that periodically until my lunch break. And turns out I didn't really need to do that. But basically what I have figured out as of today is that how it seems to be is that as long as you connect before you start up the game, then you're fine. If you don't connect, if you connect before you start up the game and then go offline, you'll be fine to play offline normally. But if you are on your network, on your home network, you connect, then every time you boot up the game, it's going to retry to connect to the Steam servers. And then if it can't connect to the Steam servers, then you won't be able to play because the buttons won't work. and it's something I've never come across with any other game before. So my guess is it's probably something with how PlayStation configured things. I don't know. I did submit a bug report to Sony Santa Monica about this. I haven't heard anything back about it one way or the other, but yeah. Anyway, that's all I got.
Okay. Now, I've got several questions. I'm trying to decide what order I want to ask them in. But I guess the first one I'll say is, well, I assume you logged into your Sony account, correct? For
Right.
when you started the game. Okay, because I was gonna ask if
Yeah, but you can't log in on the Steam Deck, or you can like connect it. I don't understand how it works. I just know that like you don't. Well, I guess maybe you can log in, but you can't use the PlayStation overlay. I think that's all it is. It's just the PlayStation overlay isn't an option on Steam Deck because it's a Windows thing.
okay, because I was wondering if I was wondering if you were asked to log in every time you booted up the game, or if it was just like a one-time thing
Just
that I
one
would
time.
ask you.
Just one
Okay,
time, and you can
'cause-
decline if you want to. You don't even have to. But they're still not selling it in those countries where you can't have a PSN account.
Right. And it really makes me wonder then if this is maybe going to be the way they do things like from now on. I mean, granted, I feel like this should have been the way they had in the first place, just like not make it. I mean, since it doesn't seem like it is technically a requirement, since it doesn't seem it to be that way, I'm like, why not just have it that way? Just like ask if you want to log into an account or not, and say, here are the features we have, and you can just say, no, I'm just gonna skip, and then just get back to the game. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting that the game it doesn't require you to do that, and it's also interesting because I believe shortly after you told me that you got the game running on the Steam Deck, I think I saw that the Steam Deck is announced as verified on the Steam page, which is definitely interesting indeed.
Yeah, well,
So,
I think that it must be that they just the limited testing they did, it was good performance. But the problem is that it's so like it's typically when there's more going on in the environment around you that the performance starts to have issues. It's not necessarily like enemies in combat, even though it does come up in combat when there's a lot of stuff around you as well, when there's lots of environmental detail and shadows and so on. And even if you have everything turned down to low, and it actually still looks great on low, I'll say that. Even though I always bump up the character models because they seem to have no impact on performance whatsoever. But anyway.
yeah, and that actually leads me into my next question. So you said that Ragnarok is based on the PS5 version, correct?
I'm guessing that. I mean, like, I'm honestly not sure. Because, well, it might be technically, but the thing is that they're using the PS4 engine because, like Horizon Forbidden West was a new engine, which is why it was, or at least it was like an updated version of the engine, which is the reason why you had the more performance issues when it came to Steam Deck, like really, really bad performance. Whereas God of War Ragnarok, it's using the exact same engine that 2018 used. Like it looks identical. Like there might be a few additional details here and there, but for the most part, it's like this is the same engine for sure.
Okay. In that case, that it makes sense then. Because I was going to say, I'm very surprised then that you got the performance you did if it was running the PS5 version. But since it's running this, it's using the same engine as the PS4 version, then that makes a lot more sense as to why you got the performance that you did on the Steam Deck. So yeah, but yeah, definitely glad to hear that you are enjoying it and that you're also able to play it both on your desktop and on the go. So that's always a plus.
Absolutely. All right. Any other questions or thoughts before we get into the news?
No, sir.
All right. So we got a handful of topics today, but the biggest thing of all is that there was a PlayStation State of Play yesterday. Because time of recording, it is Wednesday, the 25th of September. So yesterday, on the 24th of September, we had a PlayStation State of Play rather than a PlayStation Showcase. Mostly third-party stuff. There was some first-party stuff. There's a bunch of different announcements. So we can either do this just in the order that they appear on the PlayStation blog, or we can do them in the order that they actually appeared in the in the presentation. Do you have a preference on either one of those?
Either's fine.
All right, so I think we'll save the big one for the end because that was the big thing that was, it was the last thing in the presentation, but we'll talk about the rest of the stuff. All right, going to the very top here. So first thing we had was some Astrobot free DLC that's coming out that's just basically adding stuff related to both Stellar Blade and Helldivers 2. So there's that coming out and sometime this fall. We also had, as we talked about last week, the remaster of Horizon Zero Dawn was announced, which is, if you already own the PS4 version, because there's no PS5 version of Horizon, it is just $10 for an upgrade. Same goes with PC. It's also just $10 to make the upgrade. And if you don't own one of those and you just want to get the remaster, it's $50, which isn't terrible, but it is what it is. We had the release date for Lego Horizon Adventures, which is November 14th. We had some what someone referred to as the remaster of the PlayStation 5 Pro presentation. So just basically kind of showing some more stuff with the PlayStation 5 Pro, some games specifically that hadn't previously been talked about that are going to be enhanced by it. Most of the stuff they'd already shown. Basically, I think the only thing that was really new in that selection was Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, which hopefully is still coming this year, but I'm guessing it is, because they're supposed to have a playable demo at the Tokyo Game Show, which I think is going on right now, if I'm not mistaken. Then they also had a new collection of controllers and faceplates for the PS5, with a blue/purple one, a fully white one which is just like I guess more of a glossy white, and then a green one, which is like an emerald green. They announced the monthly games for PlayStation Plus, which includes WWE 2K24, Dead Space, and Doki Doki Literature Club Plus, which is a terrifying game. And if you played it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, trust me on that. Okay. Then they also showed an expansion, like a full expansion for Alan Wake 2 called The Lake House, which is basically, it's some type of crossover with Control, which really had me at first thinking that it was Control 2, and then I saw that it was just an expansion for Alan Wake 2. And so anyway, I'll get into that later. There was Arch-Age Chronicles, which is an action RPG, and I believe it's also an MMO. Dragon Age The Veilguard just showed off some more gameplay of that. Dynasty Warriors Origins, basically just another Dynasty Warriors game. Fantasian Neo Dimension, which we already knew about, the Hironobu Sakaguchi game that was previously exclusive to Apple Arcade and is coming to multiple platforms on December 5th. Then they showed off one of the PS1 inspired horror games that's coming. PS1 inspired indie horror games called Fear the Spotlight. It's coming out October 22nd. A new Fortnite controller. A game that's like a horror-ish, appears to be Dark Souls-like game called Hell Is Us. A Hitman VR game for PSVR 2. remasters of Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 officially announced. A remastered collection of the 2 Lunar games from the PlayStation 1, both Silver Star Story and Eternal Blue complete. A new Metro game that's going to be a VR game for PSVR 2 coming on November 7th. Another trailer for Monster Hunter Wilds, which got its official release date of February 28th, 2025. Palworld being confirmed as coming to PlayStation 5. In fact, I think it already has dropped. It was a shadow drop yesterday. Stellar Blade is getting Nier Automata DLC. Then there's this claymation-based game called The Midnight Walk, which is coming to PS5 and PSVR 2 in spring 2025. Some DLC for Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge called Radical Reptiles. And I believe that's a paid DLC, probably. Then there is I'm not sure if it's free DLC. It's probably not, for Sonic Cross Shadow Generations, where they'll have Shadow with Keanu Reeves doing the voice. I'm guessing because it's a tie-in with the upcoming Sonic 3 movie. A game called Towers of Agaspa, which is an open world adventure with exploration and so on and so forth. It's kind of janky, but it's an online multiplayer game. And then the final announcement was the next Ghost game, Ghost of Yotei. Coming, it is from Sucker Punch, of course, coming in 2025. So, there was a whole bunch of announcements. Give me some of your standouts. Or we'll just do one at a time, I guess, and go back and forth.
Yeah, that sounds good. So, one of the games that stood out to me, and this isn't necessarily because I had any sort of attachment to it, but was the Lunar Collection. Now, I never played the games on the PS1. In fact, this was actually, I think, maybe the first time I even heard of the games to begin with. But having those, I guess, 16 or the PS1 case, maybe it would be more like 32-bit, but having those pixel JRPGs is just phenomenal to me. So with that, I really, it really caught my attention, and I thought, oh, yeah. Which one's that? The first one or second one?
Second one.
Okay. So yeah, so it definitely looked great. Like I said, I never played it before, but it definitely looked very appealing to me, just because, you know, it beautiful pixelated graphics, traditional JRPG combat, you know, so it definitely looks good. And having the collection, and even though it wasn't stated in the trailer, it later was. I think it was Gung Ho, the publishing company, said that it is coming to the Switch and PC as well, and I think they're Gung Ho is handling the physical production, so I think for like the PlayStation and Switch, but you know, coming to PC, so that's great. So I'll be picking up there when it comes out. One thing though, just on my personal taste though, is I don't know if this was the way in the original PS1 version. I mean, could be, could not be, but one thing if I have the option to, is possibly just disable the voiceover, just because for me personally, if I'm playing a pixelated game, it's weird having voices coming from the characters.
Yeah.
I'd rather just read the text. But yeah, definitely looks good to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the PS1 version does have voiceover, but it's been a really long time since I played. And I never actually finished it. My sister played and finished it though, and she was really big into it. Can't tell if I'm missing a disc or if it just It's supposed no, it's only 3 discs. But yeah, I do remember I played a bit of it. It was hard. It was a hard game. Or well, at least it was to me back then. I don't know if it would still be hard to me today. I'm guessing it probably would because most of those older JRPGs are pretty hard. But I'm not honestly that interested. Mostly just because I remember how much I struggled with playing the second one, and that's the only real reason. But I may consider still grabbing the physical for Switch because it's like, yeah, it's a collectible kind of thing. So potentially, we'll see. Yeah. So, first thing that stood out to me. So I think since it's near the top of the list anyway, talk about that Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. So I was actually surprised that from a visual standpoint, it does look a lot better than the original. Like, this wasn't like with Last of Us Part 2, where the difference was, you couldn't tell the difference, where it basically was no different. It really does look better. They didn't make Aloy look worse, which is great. They actually kind of made her look better, I think, for the most part. So that was good. The upgrade fee being only $10, I think is good. I'm glad that they're doing that. Will I be getting it? No. At least not. No. I mean, I don't have any plans to. If anything, I might consider it down the line just to see how it compares visually. But even then, it's just like, it's a really hard sell because I don't think I'm actually going to replay this game. And plus I know that it's probably, with the improved visuals, the performance is going to be worse. Though I guess Nixxes is handling the port, so that's good to know, because they did a great job with Forbidden West. But even so, like, I definitely would not pay full price for this. Not a chance. And even if I get the remaster down the line, because of the fact that, it's only $10 for the upgrade, I don't know, it would be a while before I would really consider that. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about that one.
Now, a couple things I'm curious about with that. I guess one thing I would be wondering is, with the remaster, if you got the upgrade, or at least with the upgrade, because I feel like you probably could still buy it separately. But I was wondering would you still technically have access to the original version in addition to the remastered version? Like, if you wanted to say jump back and forth.
Would assume so, but I'm not sure. Because, I mean, like, I can't imagine they would just, like, take away your license for the original game. So, I don't know. I mean, my guess is that probably they just realized that there's a lot of people who will not buy this unless they do this. This is the only way that they can get it. And they can sell it to new people. Sell the brand new $50 version to new people. But, like, I don't know exactly how that works. Let me look and see. There's a separate blog post about this remaster. I will note that's coming out October 31st. So let's see what we got here. But of course it is day and date on PC, which is so let's see here. Of course, Nixxes is doing the remaster, which is great, so it's going to be a great port. In fact, it's not even a port. It's because the fact that this being actually, I guess really all they did was they just took the original game and redid some stuff to it. So it's not actually like a remake, it's just a remaster. So probably would just continue to use the same thing. But either way, the fact that Nixxes is involved is great because they did such a great job. Well, they've done a great job with every one of their ports, but let's see here. 10 hours of re-recorded conversation, mocap, and countless graphical improvements that bring the game to the same visual fidelity as its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. And like the screenshot that they show, one of the screenshots they show here of Aloy, like she looks great. They legitimately made her look great. And I mean, I don't think she looked bad in the original. Obviously, the big thing here is going to be the mods, like for people who use mods, because they're probably not going to work with this. So there's that standpoint. But yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything additional. I mean, they added, you know, the haptic features from the DualSense for this version, which frankly they're all pretty gimmicky, and I've used the DualSense for Forbidden West, and it's largely very gimmicky. Has trophy support, of course, for the PC version with the PlayStation overlay. Has DLSS 3, of course, and FSR 3.1 with frame generation if you want to use that, which I wouldn't. Old saves will work, so you can bring your, if you've completed the game previously on PS4, PS5, or PC, you can take your old save and import it in. So that's great. That is very, very good. And but yeah, I mean, it doesn't appear that the $10 upgrade fee would work with like GOG, but it does work with Steam and Epic, so that's very good. Owners of the game disc can still are still able to get this offer as well, so that's good. I mean, you do have to have your disc inserted each time to play the game, but that's typically the case when you're playing a disc-based game anyway. So, of course, unless of course you don't have, if you only have the digital edition of the PS5, you will not have the access to the upgrade offer. So, there is, I think that's, yeah, there's nothing further on that. So it's all pretty much standard. I mean, I think the fact that they are doing it for only $10 for the upgrade, that's pretty reasonable. Because it is definitely improved, and it's completely optional. Like, you'll get some of the bells and whistles, but it's not something where you're going to be missing anything other than some additional visual improvements. And some of those things might already, you know, be stuff you can just get free from mods anyway. So I'd say it's one of those things where you do it if you want to, and if you don't, you don't. And I probably won't, because I don't have any itch to go back and play Zero Dawn, especially because I still haven't finished Forbidden West. I do want to. So.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next game that stood out to you?
Well, partially, it seems interesting to me, but I'm not entirely certain if I'm sold on it, is the Hell Is Us, because the idea of a first-person Souls-like is intriguing, but I just don't know how that translates properly, just because of having the first-person shooter aspect mixed with the Souls-like aspect. Just seems, I mean, experimenting with these types of different genres and blending them together is incredible, but I just don't know how that properly, how it's gonna work in the execution. And one thing that, which I didn't initially notice at first, but then I saw something in a couple of comments, was that the character seems to move so much slower than the enemies do. And then once I actually saw that and I looked back, I thought, it does seem like the enemies do move a whole lot faster than you do, which, I mean, sure, to a degree, that does happen in Dark Souls games where enemies do move a whole lot faster than you do. But I guess in the first-person shooter, for the most part, I mean, sure, sometimes enemies do move faster than you in FPS games, but they do seem to move relatively around the same as you do. So I'm not certain how that handles there. Also, I also need to go back, because I thought I saw this on the Steam page, that there was something mentioning about roguelike elements, which I'm not certain how I feel about that in a first-person shooter game. yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm intrigued by the game, the idea and the concept, but I just don't know how I feel about it in the execution. So it's gonna be something where I look at it some more in the future, see what happens and develops, and then I'll decide what happens from there if I want to get it or not.
Now, I'm wondering if maybe you're mixing it up with a different game because this one's not first person. This one's third person.
Wait. Oh gosh, I might be getting mixed up then. Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean, I know, like, I mean, there was like that Metro game that was first person, of course, because the Metro games are first person. But no, Hell is Us is a third person action adventure game, and
Okay.
it does appear to be a Souls like from just how it looks, but it could very well end up being as much of a Souls like as Black Myth Wukong, where you don't have to worry about, you don't actually lose your gained experience or souls or anything like that, and the enemies leading to the boss are not as difficult, but the bosses themselves are difficult. So
hmm Okay, yeah, I'm very wondering what I mixed this up with. I'm
but yeah, this is definitely third person the whole time.
Yeah, I mixed
And
this up
like
with something, but I gotta figure out what
looking at
that
the
was. But
PlayStation blog for that, a separate blog post within their list, but there will be an exclusive YouTube premiere on Monday, September 30th at that is 11 a.m. Eastern time. So, and I mean, launches in 2025. Of course, as you mentioned, it's also coming to PC, which is fantastic because this is another one that was like, ooh, this looks cool. I like what I see, especially now that I've actually beaten a Souls game. So I feel like, okay, now I can actually be interested in the Souls-like games because I know now that I enjoy it. So yeah, but yeah, Hell's Us, that was one of the ones that definitely stood out to me a lot, seeing that early on. Similarly, one of the ones that initially stood out to me that ultimately ended up losing me once I found out that it was an MMO was Archage Chronicles. That was another one that looked really cool. Oh, and I guess it's part of a series that already exists. So, but yeah, it is an MMO. I don't know how much of that you could do single player. I mean, I guess typically MMOs you really can do single player, but I'm a little unsure about it. It's also coming to PC, of course. I'll at least keep my eyes on it and see if it's something that interests me, but I don't want a game that has a lengthy, endless loop of stuff because Destiny already drew me in like that, and I can't do that again. It's just too much. So, yeah.
yeah, I definitely agree with you about that. About how I initially was like, yeah, this seems pretty good, but then once I saw it's an MMO, I was just very disappointed, just because
Like,
that's not really my thing.
What was the next game that stood out to you?
So next game is something that we have actually talked about before, and that was also a rumor, and that is Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 Remastered. Definitely glad to have official confirmation that this game does exist rather than some random display at random display saying, "Oh yeah, so Legacy of Kain 1 and 2 Remaster, possibly coming, possibly not, hee hee." But yeah, and so I'm definitely looking forward to this. And wait, did we even get a release date for this?
December 10th.
Okay, yeah, so that's not bad. And yeah, and this was done by Aspire, who I believe also did the Tomb Raider collection, which also was a pretty good remaster with the work they did there. So, and I heard that they also did Star Wars Bounty Hunter, which I think also was a good remaster as well. So this should be good. You know, having that type of original classic game, but also having it graphically enhanced for modern, and also the controls should also be updated as well. So
Yeah.
that's definitely great. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah, like I said, I don't think I played the original games. I know that at one point I got the at least the second game, and then also Blood Omen. But at some point they removed the original Legacy of Kain 1, and
Right.
that was before I bought it, and I was like, bummer. But
Yeah.
now I get to play it.
Yep. And it does let you switch between classic visuals and the updated visuals. They do say that they fixed the controls, so you actually have good camera controls, and since the original was based more off of using the D-pad when it came out, they fixed it so that you can use the joystick for movement, which is great.
Yes.
Oh, and I guess the original version didn't have a Y-axis for the camera because they just didn't really have. Well, they didn't give any robust skyboxes, as they put it, because you couldn't look up. So they made some, and hey, that's great. But yes, I am very excited about this. I mean, obviously, we knew it was coming a while ago. I'm just glad it finally got announced. The one thing that I'm wondering about is whether or not they're going to have a physical version. I mean, I would assume they will, but I haven't found them yet, and I'm trying to see if there's anything in here that actually says whether or not you can buy it physical. Because, I mean, my problem is that I want to get it physical on Switch, even though I have a feeling it's going to be 30 frames per second, because of course it would be. But of course, I'm definitely planning to get it on Steam. And if it's like a limited run thing where I have to wait longer, I may end up doing a comparison where I just do like Steam Deck. I might even do Steam Deck versus Steam Deck on that. Do the remaster versus like the Dreamcast or the PS1 version. That could be really interesting, because I do have, I used to have the Dreamcast version. I might try to I probably will just end up grabbing finding the PS1 version, because like I have the PS1 version on my Vita, or at least I used to. I'm not sure if it's still there because of the issues I had with all that. And now, of course, I can't transfer anything from my PS3 until I figure out how to get it modded. But it would be interesting to see how it is in DuckStation versus the remaster. Like, what are the differences? Because, I mean, obviously, like, the graphical improvements won't be there in DuckStation, but you can get the HD resolution, you can get, the better textures and everything. It just won't look as good otherwise, but it could be interesting to just do that comparison, Steam Deck versus Steam Deck. Because really, you're just wanting to see what the difference is in terms of the visuals. Of course, well, it's not so much the difference between the original and everything, it's the difference between this is what you can do through PS1 emulation versus this is what you can do, versus this is what they did with the official version, official remaster. So that part could be really interesting. But anyway, I agree wholeheartedly on that one, and that is going to be a day one purchase for me. I just hope they do a physical version and that it doesn't take forever for them to do it. All right. As far as the next one that stood out to me, let me find my spot in here. I'm not even going to say anything about Dragon Age: The Veilguard, except that some of the recent stuff that came out about it made it go from something that I was like, this doesn't look bad, to like, I'm not touching this game with a 10-foot pole. You insert the message. You went too far. They went way too far with it, and it's like, yeah, no, I will not support this garbage. I don't care. Even if the game is fun, I am not touching this. Just like with Spider-Man, Spider-Man 2, I am not going to touch the game because I'm not okay with that. So anyway, But talking about games that do something that did interest me, and that is, of course, the DLC for Alan Wake 2, The Lake House, with it going back to the setting of Alan Wake and involving Control, the Federal Bureau of Control specifically, which is, the bureau that Control is based in, and it's just like, oh man, the story in that game is so good. It's so good. It's just like, oh man, I love everything about this game. And, even though, obviously I haven't played Alan Wake 2. I'm waiting to see if they ever bring it to Steam, which, God willing, I hope they do in the future. But even if they don't, it's going to take a while for me to get through the other Remedyverse games anyway. So by the time I get through all the Remedyverse games, they may finally release Alan Wake 2 on Steam. And I'm all in on this. Just obviously not right now. I have to wait, and it's fine because I don't have enough time to play the games I have, so I can wait. But yeah.
Yeah, that definitely was a very interesting reveal, and it definitely reminded me that I still need to go, well, not even go, I have to start Control in the first place, because I bought that at least a year or so ago, and I just still haven't played it. Now, granted, I have never played Alan Wake 1 before either.
Right.
I still need to get to that, and also the other game that Remedy made, Quantum Break. Mm-hmm. That's another of their games I need to get into. And actually,
Max Payne. There's...
Well, I'm trying to remember. I don't even think I own the Max Payne games. Which, so I actually got a question for you, based on what you've played so far. Do you have a recommended game that I should start in this Remedy-verse?
Well, I think it depends on what your tolerance is for jank. Because the controls for Alan Wake have some jank to them. Well, I should say maybe less the controls, more the visuals. Because it very much looks like an early Xbox 360 game. Because that's what it is. It's an early Xbox 360 game. And it, some of the facial animations are just really, really bad. It's pretty short though. It's not a very long game, and of course, if you're not bothered by horror stuff, then it shouldn't even affect you. For me, I had to kind of I could only do one episode at a time because it was just some of the stuff is terrifying. But Control, as an overall package, is a better game. Just the controls are great, the visuals are great, the atmosphere, the story, just it's so interesting. And I know that you are way more picky about the Steam Deck performance than I am. I went for the 40 FPS mode, which it could maintain 40 pretty well, and occasionally would drop into the high 30s, but it wasn't bad. For me, it was fine, and I played the majority of the game on Steam Deck. I think if you mess with settings lowering the visual fidelity and stuff, you can probably get 60 on Steam Deck. I was never happy enough with it. I was I'd rather have a little bit better visuals and get a slightly worse frame rate just for that, because for me, it was I want something that's a good visual showcase for the Steam Deck, and at the same time is also something where I feel like the visuals aren't distracting. Because I have the options with PC. I'm not, if this was on Switch and not the streaming version, which is the only version that's currently on Switch, then yeah, you'd have to compromise because you don't have a choice. But on PC and on Steam Deck, I have the choice. So I'm going to go with what I want for this particular game, and it worked great. I loved everything I played about that game. I did not finish the DLC yet. Eventually I want to go back to it and do that. But some of the DLC is connected to Alan Wake, which just blew my mind when it happened. And I did all of that, but I didn't do some of the other DLC in its entirety yet. Um, but yeah, so I would say Control. If you don't, if you can't handle the jank, then Control would be my recommendation. If you can handle the jank, I'd say Alan Wake first, and then from there, Control. The Max Payne games I haven't played yet, but I do have them. So eventually I want to go through those. I'm kind of thinking maybe next year a goal of mine will be to do a bunch of Remedyverse games because, I mean, I have the 3 Max Payne games. I have Quantum Break. Of course, I have Alan Wake, but I've already played that. Control, I just need to, finish up all the DLC. So, that Control's great on PC as well. Like, PC, I was getting high frame rates with ray tracing on. And I mean, I ended up turning it off because it was just like, yeah, I could have the ray tracing on, but I'd rather have the extra performance. So, but that's me. So, granted, that was not in like open world environments because I mean, yes, the levels are open-ish, but it's not outside. You're basically just in a single building the whole time, but the building's like constantly, well, not constantly changing, but it has barriers, borders to it because it's just map sections and everything like that. So, but the map in that game is actually good too, even though it's all 2D overhead. Yeah. Anyway, I've said enough about Control. So, I finished that one on stream actually for one of my 24-hour streams. It was probably 2023. I think that was when I did it. Yeah, I think it was last stack up stream I did is when I finished up the story on that, and then just went from there and did other stuff. But yeah. All right, next game for you.
Well, I guess I guess it's not really that it's a big deal, but it was just something that sort of caught me by surprise, and so I'll just have this as sort of like a quick footnotes, and that is just the Palworld ports of to PS5. That definitely surprised me a bit. I mean, granted, I thought there was discussions here or there between the devs about possibly having it ported to the PS5, but nothing really came out of that. But so like seeing it announced, not only that, but also shadow dropped, was definitely a surprise. Now, one thing also I'll say is the Xbox version definitely, I don't know if it ever even partially caught up, but it definitely was behind a lot from the PC version. So I don't know how the PS version is going to be compared with the Xbox version and the PS5 version. Now, granted, Microsoft stepped in to help with development of the Xbox version since it was so far behind the PC version and there were much more bugs and stuff like that. So I'm interested in seeing how the PS5 version is going to perform. But yeah, that's it from me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. I was pretty sure I remember hearing that was going to be happening anyway. So from that standpoint, it's like, okay, great. I'm glad that it's over there. More people get to play the game, and you had positive things to say about it from the time that you spent playing it. So, like, great. I'm all in. I'm all for it. All right, I only have one game left on my list, so depending on if you have anything else you wanted to discuss, we can go over that first and then go to the last game, or
I have nothing additional to that game, so I mean, if you have anything else, you can definitely go ahead and
just the big reveal at the end. So we got the official announcement of what Sucker Punch has been working on, and it is a little game called Ghost of Yotei. So, to be clear on this is not a direct sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. It's still in the same world, as far as we know, based on the blog post that they did after the fact. This is actually set more than 300 years after Ghost of Tsushima. So it's a completely new person. We don't know about where Jin's story went after the end of Ghost of Tsushima. Um, my guess is that probably we will get that later on. This could very well be, though they haven't stated it specifically, this could just be basically kind of like their Miles Morales, where it's a smaller game. Now, well, I guess maybe not necessarily as small as Miles Morales was, because that was a very short game, but more like this is and because this is taking place 300 years later in a separate area of Japan, with a different protagonist, obviously, because 300 years later. My guess is that probably they're going to do this, and then they'll do a Ghost of Tsushima 2 later on. But there are some things about this that make it a little... give me a bit of pause, and I'll talk about my thoughts on it specifically after you get a chance to say yours, but I do want to note very specifically, it is a female protagonist. The actress who is portraying this character, both in terms of motion capture, so her face is being used, her likeness is being used, and her voice is being used. This actress is very much an activist on a certain side of things, and definitely not really sure what this is going to mean for the story. I have plenty of thoughts, but I will let you go first.
Yeah, so this definitely, I would say, could be considered the highlights of the state of play, and possibly the thing that to a degree saved the state of play, because I mean, not that the other games were bad, but I feel like if people were to rate it, they would probably say it was pretty mediocre. But I definitely think that this definitely helped out a lot. Definitely interesting to have not necessarily a side story, but I guess similar to what you said, having a Miles Morales type of game before having a full titled sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Also interesting to also have it set much years later, which definitely, I think, also based on what was shown in the trailer, might influence the gameplay as well.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm definitely interested in it. And initially, when I was also watching the trailer, one of the locations I saw was like a snowy mountain. I was like, huh, interesting. We didn't have that in the first game that I remember. No, we actually did have sort of a snowy area that you could go to. But I'm partially wondering, based on what we saw in the trailer, though, could that type of environment hamper your movement? So if that's something that, if you're in combat, will that hamper how the enemies move in reaction to you? Will that help you? That's just something that popped in my head, just a question I had. Going back to sort of like another gameplay aspect, the character had a sort of like matchlock rifle, which makes sense because more years in the future, and that's that type of weapon is more developed and also being brought over to Japan as well. It's very intriguing to me, having that, especially based on, granted, you had other types of weapons as well in Ghost of Tsushima that weren't, necessarily a sword, but, I'm intrigued to see like how that is used, also in, like in the midst of combat as well. Granted, we didn't really see too much of gameplay. It was really more so just a CGI trailer, so can't really speculate or theorize too much about how the game's going to, or what the game's going to play like. But I'm definitely intrigued by it. Now, sort of similar to what you said before, the actress behind the main character is definitely interesting, to say the least. And I'm hoping this is a situation where she just says what she says, but she doesn't really have any direct impact on the story. Because, like, I will definitely say this: I'm not against playing as a female character.
Right.
I definitely think that's something that, should be said. Like, granted, I play Metroid. I think we definitely know I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
playing as a female character. So I definitely don't have a problem here, but it's just a matter of how are they going to handle it? Like if like, because I mean, for one thing, also, like I can't remember what her name is, but the uh I guess Thief from the first game, like, you know, if you played as her, like, say for example, you had to like say if you had to like switch characters in the Ghost one, and you played as her
Oh,
for a
you're
while,
talking
like,
about
I wouldn't
Yuna?
necessarily.
Yuna?
Yes. If you played as her, like, I wouldn't mind because, you know, she has combat. You know, we like
Yeah.
it's already been established that she, you know, has combat experience, so I wouldn't mind that. So if it's something similar here in this game, you know, I wouldn't mind it as well. But if they try to push some sort of message, or at least if the actress tries to push it, I don't know what I'll do. I mean, I think at least do is wait a while until the game comes out and see what happens sort of like early on and see if there's any development there, and then, you know, based on that, make a decision if, you know, I want to get it or not. But I guess one thing also I am curious, because they didn't say, well, actually, yeah, they didn't say it at all. So I wonder when we could be getting a PC version. Because I mean, I don't think we're gonna get this day one.
No.
No. So I'm thinking
Probably
like
not.
maybe a year. You think?
Year or two.
But,
Hard to say
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, God of War Ragnarok came out like a year and 2 months, or I'm sorry, a year and 10 months after it came to PS4 and PS5.
Okay. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have on the game.
All right, so I'm going to start off first of all by saying I don't think that a female protagonist in and of itself is a bad thing. Not necessarily. Sucker Punch in general, like, I am a massive fan of their games. I think that they are, honestly, they're my favorite developer. I think that they have not made a bad game so far. But I mean, their gameplay, their storytelling, their graphics, just like everything about their games. Well, maybe not everything, but like their games aren't perfect, but they're excellent. And that's something that has been consistent. There has not been a single game they've made where I've thought it was a bad game. Now, I will say, like, Sly Cooper 3 was probably my least favorite of the 3 Sly Cooper games, but it was really just because they got rid of the collectibles for that game, which, it's like, I love collectibles, so that's honestly the only thing that I really had a complaint about that game. As a complaint about that game. But they have done, like, they did a female protagonist for a side game, which was Infamous First Light, which was connected to Second Son. So they had the main character was the character Fetch, who was a side character in Infamous Second Son, voiced and modeled after Laura Bailey, who I've said positive things about in the past. I still think she's great. And that was stellar. Like, First Light was excellent. The only thing I didn't like about it was the fact that most of the trophies were tied to score, attack, arena things, which, while they made sense for the story, why there was the arena and all that, why, I mean, this training area for her is, like, made perfect sense. I don't like that type of gameplay, because even though the combat is great, and it does technically extend your ability to do that combat, I just hate the score attack stuff. That is not my kind of thing. I hate that. So that is the only Infamous game I did not do the platinum for, including the side game for Infamous 2 Festival of Blood, which I did do the platinum. Or, well, it doesn't actually have a platinum, but it does have 100% all the trophies. So that aspect, and just how well they've handled characters in general in the past, gives me much more willingness to give them a chance. Because I think Sucker Punch has proven themselves over and over and over and over. However, what gives me pause, apart from the personality of, I mean, like the kind of stuff that the actress has said, is what we have seen with recent Sony games, where the first game will be relatively neutral in terms of its messaging, and then the second game they'll go all in on the message. And that is what made Spider-Man 2 something that I will not play. Because they went all in. They doubled down on the thing that people hated, which was Mary Jane. They made her even more insufferable than she already was. Of course, they also made her less attractive, like way. I mean, that's not that big of a deal. It's just like, why did you do that? I mean, apart from it, now her outside appearance matching the inside appearance. But really, more than anything, it was they doubled down. They included more of her stealth missions. Where it's like, okay, that's one thing, but they made her so overpowered that she could take out the Venom symbiote enemies more easily than Miles and Peter, which is stupid. It doesn't make any sense at all. She has like this electric stun gun thing that can take them out more easily than the two guys with superpowers. And Miles has like electric powers. And he couldn't take them out as easily as she could. That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. And then on top of that, they ruined Peter's character. They completely emasculated him. And poor Miles. Like, I know you're not a fan of Miles Morales, and that's perfectly fine. I thought that the character was well written. He was very likable. Like, I loved Miles. I thought he was a great character. Regardless of, some of the messaging that they had in his game, which kind of just pushed things further. And then, of course, they just went full in with Spider-Man 2. But they ruined his character. And they made, like, Peter stay with this woman who's essentially abusive. I mean, like, this nasty, abusive woman. And then let Miles take over for him. And I don't have any problem with Miles taking over per se. I just think the reasoning didn't make any sense, because if they had actually killed off Peter, it would have made perfect sense. Having Miles be the new Spider-Man, 100%. But the problem is that they just, instead of killing him, they figuratively killed him by emasculating him and making him go off to start a climate change organization, because that's how he was going to save the world, instead of, using his superpowers. It's like... So I'm worried that Sucker Punch is being influenced in the same way. And I think the big thing we're going to have to find out is if Sweet Baby is involved. That's going to be a big indicator that there's probably going to be something that we don't want to see here. And that concerns me. More than anything, it concerns me because Sucker Punch is basically my favorite developer. And they've made such great games, and I want to be able to enjoy this game when it comes to PC. But if they are going to do that with the story, if they're going to do this girl boss thing, especially if they decide that they're just going to, like, defame Jin 300 years after he's dead.
Oh, gosh.
Then I will just be so mad that I won't even touch it. Now, my hope is that because of the various backlash, especially things related to Sweet Baby, that Sucker Punch has not had them influence the story in any way, shape, or form, that they are just going to continue to do the excellence that they've done so far. And then I'm totally fine with them having a female protagonist, having her able to take out enemies and everything. Like, yeah, there would definitely be, from a realistic standpoint, some challenges with her being a 90-pound woman fighting off big guys in armor, but the kind of guys that, I mean, if she's fighting off, typical Ronin who's really just wearing robes, it's like, okay, she has a sword, she has a musket. It makes sense that she could take him out. I mean, because that's less of a strength issue and it's more just having a sharp weapon and having a gun. And if that's what you're going to do, and the assassination stuff, like, I'm totally fine with that. I think that they could very well do an excellent story regardless of any of this, and I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove otherwise. One thing I will also say now, this actress, in terms of her out there, the stuff that she says, her tweets and all that, I am totally fine with separating the art from the artist, and I will give her the benefit of the doubt, or rather, I'm really just giving Sucker Punch the benefit of the doubt, because she's also voiced Anna Bray in Destiny 2, at least for most of the game, because like the beginning they had, I can't remember her name, it was like Jamie Chung, I believe was her name, who actually, if you remember that terrible Dragon Ball Evolution movie or whatever it was called, she played Chi-Chi in that. But anyway, this actress has voiced Anna Bray for most of the time that she's been in Destiny 2. And, regardless of the elements that Bungie themselves put in, she's never done any of this unhinged, weird stuff that she's says in her personal tweets on her Twitter. So, that being said, I think that it could very well be that she just does a great job in this role, and that I will be able to give her all the thumbs up possible and say, you did a great job with this role. I don't agree with you in many ways when it comes to real stuff, but I love what you did with this role, and this is a great game, and I will love it, and then I will look forward to the eventual return to Jin's story, because it is not done. And, I mean, it had a conclusion, but, well, I should say the story of Ghost of Tsushima with the Mongol invasion had a conclusion. But Jin's story itself is not concluded. And it's not like there was a cliffhanger, but they could easily do a lot more with his story. And the fact that they did make this big gap in between says to me that there will still be a future game where Jin actually has a follow-up story. And, so yeah. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt, and this is one situation where it is a plus for us that it's not coming to PC day one, because we have an opportunity to find out before it comes to PC whether or not it's going to be worthwhile to support. And if we find out that it is garbage, then we just won't support it. And if it turns out that it is as good as Ghost of Tsushima, just with a different character, set in a different time period, with some different mechanics because it's set 300 years later, then thumbs up. I'm all in. And I guess one thing I also want to note with this is that if they were smart, well, rather, if Sony was smart, I don't think this is so much a Sucker Punch issue, it's a Sony issue. If Sony was smart, they would just release it day and date, because, for one, they would get a whole lot of people buying it just because, well, I mean, they get some people who would buy it just because they want to support this idea of a day and date game. They'll get other people who will buy it because they love Sucker Punch games, or they love Ghost of Tsushima, and they'd buy it day one because of that, which would probably be me. And then they would also just there wouldn't be as much time for there to be any backlash before it drops. And I'm definitely someone who says, very much so, especially after what I've seen with God of War Ragnarok, that the backlash sometimes is completely overblown. Like, really, I mean, apart from what people dislike about what they did with the gameplay and with Kratos in general, which I think actually what they did with Kratos is completely consistent with his previously established character. It's just without so much of the rage, but the aspects of him being a family man who loves and cares for his family. I mean, it was being tricked into killing his wife and daughter, which is why he has that white appearance. It's because the ashes of his family is on his body permanently. It was that drove him to go and take revenge on all the Greek gods and murder the entire pantheon of Greek gods throughout the numerous games that they did before they did 2018. And of course, God of War 2018, not actually set in 2018, but set long after the events of the previous God of War games. Like, all this makes sense. Plus, I find Kratos is so relatable because it's like he recognizes everything. He knows what he did in the past, and he knows that while he doesn't necessarily regret it entirely, he does regret because it didn't bring him the peace he was looking for. But he did legitimately love his wife and daughter, and he was just enraged because of all the ways he had been deceived and used as a puppet for so many years to ultimately kill so many of these gods and so on and so forth. But anyway, so with God of War 2018 Ragnarok, I think that some of the people's complaints, like, I don't think that they're illegitimate. The biggest reason why people separated from the gameplay changes, I think that God of War Ragnarok is so bad, without even having played it, is because of the fact that, number one, Sweet Baby was involved, but two, because they took a Norse mythological character who's supposed to be a giant, as well as any family members related to her, and they made him black. So they have the teenage, essentially teenage, giant, like last surviving giant other than Kratos' son, who's half giant because his mom was a giant. They have her as a black person. And Angerboda, like, I have no familiarity with the character prior to this, but being a Norse mythology, it makes sense. She would have probably been more like a pale white chick. And people were angry because they made her black. And it's like, okay, I get it. Sweet Baby stuff, it's dumb. But that is literally the only thing that I found in all of what I've gone through with the story that is quote-unquote woke. Everything else about the game, it's like, this is just good storytelling. And, like, the story is engaging. It has totally grabbed my attention again. And, like, I know some of the stuff that already happens, but it's like, okay, I'm refreshing my memory. Okay, these are the things that happen. These are all the reasons. This is why I'm like, wow, this is actually really good writing. So, anyway, I've ranted enough about that. Any other thoughts about anything with this topic? Or with any of the state of play stuff in general?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. So, we talked about Palworld coming to PlayStation, and Nintendo and Pokemon are suing them for copyright infringement. But it's not the designs of the characters. It's not any of the things that you would think. It's because of essentially the Pokeball animation. That's what they're suing them for, is because of the animation of throwing the ball and then it, like, captures the monster. And that is what they're suing him for. Thoughts?
So, yeah, this is definitely completely ridiculous. And I mean, the fact that they say this is a violation of patent just because of the fact that you throw a ball at an entity and said ball captures that entity is absurd, considering the fact that before Palworld, there were other games that had this same mechanic.
But
Even
they
other
weren't as
games,
successful.
even other games that were sort of Pokemon clones, like Nexomon is one that I can think of off the top of my head. And that game actually had, I believe, a sequel as well. But it's not a new thing. Other games have done this very thing, and the fact that also Nintendo filed this patent after Palworld came out, it just shows how petty Nintendo is with stuff like this. And I mean, the crazy thing is, yes, Palworld, out of all the Pokemon clones, and I even really even hesitate to call it a Pokemon clone because of the fact that it's not even really a Pokemon clone. It's sort of a survival game with Pokemon-like characters in it. Because like you could really remove all of the pals, and if you could probably even just compare it to like say Ark Survival at that point, just because that's pretty much everything else you're gonna be doing in the game. So the fact that they only now file a patent, it just, I mean, I don't even know why they would even do it in the first place, because even though Palworld was successful and came out and it made such a big splash, the fact of the matter today is that it sells so much less than an average Pokemon game would sell. So like, why would Nintendo feel at all intimidated or even threatened by such a game that sells worse than what they've done? I mean, even with the controversy behind Violet and Scarlet, because of, you know, how poorly those games ran, they still sold decently, and they still have sold more than Palworld, I'm assuming, across the entirety of this year. So I think it's completely ridiculous. Now, granted, how things happen in Japan with their laws and courts, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, and definitely not a Japanese lawyer at that. So, you know, I don't know how this could turn out. But, you know, just from my Western American layman's perspective, I think this is completely bogus. And this is just Nintendo grasping at straws and throwing a hissy fit because someone made something that people loved that is inspired by something they did, and they, you know, can't do anything about it. And they don't, or rather, they choose not to make any sort of changes or innovations. And I'm not saying they have to like make their own type of Palworld game per se. You know, I not saying they have to go around like shooting Pikachu or something like that, but they don't make anything really big or anything that truly deviates. I mean, of course, they have made other games. I'm saying they, like, the Pokemon Dungeon games were different from the mainline type of games, but, you know, they don't make these huge changes for their main games. And so, yeah, if they just were willing to A, make those changes, or B, also, you know, improve what they have, because, or at least improve the performance, because what they did with Scarlet and Violet, and especially the fact that some environment details were just bare bones anyway, so like, you know, you should not be getting that type of performance for such bare bone graphics. Even if it is on the Switch, you should definitely be getting better performance than what you got. So that's all on Nintendo. I'm hoping that they lose this case, but, you know, I feel like at the very least they're going to try to stretch this as much as they can, if anything, just so Pocket Pair, you know, sinks money into lawyer fees and stuff like that, because that is definitely the one thing that Nintendo does have that anyone they sue does not have, and that is the money to stretch out a case in court, even if they don't really have a case at all.
Right. Yeah, half of me wonders if Nintendo's legal system is basically how the quote-unquote American legal system is portrayed in the Ace Attorney games, where it's like, this doesn't represent American legal system at all. And it's funny, it's like, I remember, of course, you know, we're both familiar with Nick Rekieta, and there were points in the past where viewers got him to play the Ace Attorney games, and he just said that they're terrible. And like, it wasn't until I actually started watching some of the live streams of actual court cases, I'm like, wow, this is not even close. I mean, like, they're completely different in terms of how the legal system works in the U.S., how cases go in court versus how they go in this game. I mean, I still love them. I think the games are entertaining, and they're fun. Plus, they're great on 3DS. But it's just, yeah, this whole case is just like, I hope Nintendo loses this because this is stupid. It's like literally they're just going after them because it's quote unquote competition. It's like they didn't go after any of them that were much more clones of Pokemon games that did this type of thing in the past because the other ones weren't as successful. I mean, this one is, millions upon millions of sales, and I mean, it must just be that the only way that they thought they would have a case was to go after this little tiny thing that was, I guess, technically started by them. Unless, I mean, it would be funny if it actually wasn't started by them and if they had taken it from someone else, but obviously the gameplay is completely different between Palworld and Pokemon. The only real similarity is some of the PAL designs, compared with Pokemon designs. And apart from that, they're just completely different games. And yeah, okay, you have the ball throwing mechanic, which is like, okay, yeah, that's very similar. I can understand why they would say that it's patent infringement, but I did not realize that they filed a patent after Palworld came out, because if that's the case, then it's like that should completely disqualify their position. It's like you didn't have a patent on this until after the game came out, so this is not patent infringement because they did this before you filed the patent. But yeah. And I mean, granted, I haven't been a Pokemon fan in a really long time, or at least not like actually into the games. I loved Red and Blue. Gold and Silver were great as well. Even though I only actually played Gold. But then after that, it wasn't until Pokemon X came out that I was like actually excited about a Pokemon game, and I played X. I've actually played through it a couple times, and I enjoyed it. Even though it wasn't quite what I was hoping for, because I really just wanted a full 3D Pokemon game. And then when they finally came out with a full 3D Pokemon game, I just wasn't that interested anymore. It's just, I think it's mostly because the mechanics got too complicated. It just, like, it was very simple in Red and Blue and Gold and Silver. I mean, Gold and Silver added a little bit to the Red and Blue formula, and it was still really good. But then after that, it just kept getting more and more complicated, and it's just like, this just isn't fun anymore. Like, I don't want to do all this extra stuff. I just want to play like I did on the old games. And yes, this is old man yelling at clouds because, when I was 10 years old and played Pokemon for the first time, with Pokemon Blue on the Game Boy Color, like, it was a certain way, and then it just evolved over the years, for lack of a better term. But it got to a point where it's like, I don't enjoy this anymore. It's not fun to me. It's just overly complicated, and anyway, that's all I have to say on that topic.
Yeah. Now, I will say that I can partially agree with the things getting a little too complicated. I actually started very late. I actually started with Y,
Okay.
Pokemon Y, and
Yeah,
then
I
played
No, it is
Alpha, or what was it, Alpha Sapphire,
Alpha Sapphire,
or like that.
yeah.
So like then I played that. I went back and played White, and then when I got to like Sun and Moon, I was like, I don't know, I don't really care for some of the mechanics in this game, and I was like, I don't know. And then I just like at that point didn't even get any of the ones on the Switch. But yeah, I definitely agree that some stuff just definitely got more complicated than they should have.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually did play the original Sapphire on GBA, but it was like I played Red and Blue, and then I played Gold, which I just emulated that one actually. And then eventually I ended up buying Gold and Silver, or no, I just bought Crystal. Anyway, and I went back, and then I played Ruby. Yeah, it was Ruby that I played because it was like we'd found a cartridge in a laundromat, and I didn't have a label on it, or someone else had found it, and then they gave it to me, and I checked it out, and it's like, oh, it's Pokemon Ruby. So I finally played Gen 3. I did not like that generation at all. I really didn't like it.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't like it. And then on top of that, it was like the whole thing about too much water, you know, the meme for Alpha Sapphire and uh, whatever, the Omega Ruby. I actually agreed with that. I was like, I mean, like, I understand the meme behind it, but I actually agree that it's like, yeah, the water travel made the game so exhausting at times. But really, there was just a lot of things I didn't like about that generation. I did actually play Platinum, and because I had read about it in Nintendo Power, and I enjoyed that for the most part, but still didn't quite like it as much as Gens 1 and 2. And then I did not play Gen 5 at all. And then I played X, which I enjoyed. And then I did not play any generation after that. And it was just it was just too complicated for me, and not like, oh, I don't understand this. Is more like, it's just like, this isn't fun. You're just making it, you're just taking away the simplicity that was there before and adding all these extra mechanics. And tactically, you can get by just playing the old way, but it's just the fact that they kept introducing all these mechanics that just aren't fun to me anymore. Yeah, anyway, I'm not gonna yell at clouds anymore. But yeah, that's everything I have to say about this topic. You got anything else?
No, sir.
You want to cover this new potential Batman game?
Yeah, I will definitely do that. So there is a rumor that not only is a Batman game coming out from Rocksteady, but also it could possibly be getting backed by PlayStation, by Sony. So here's a article from Game Rant, and actually pretty much to summarize things, there was a tweet from Shapeshaw Nick, and he was responding to a tweet that was made by the Game Awards, which said, name your dream game developer for the next Batman game. And so he replied to that tweet saying, not sure which studio people's dream is, but I heard Rocksteady are back making it. I also think Sony are trying to money hat it, LOL. So that pretty much is saying that, you know, Rocksteady's making a new Batman game, and it is, you know, possibly being, well, maybe not published, but it's definitely being funded by Sony, which makes things very interesting. Now, I have several different things to say about this, but I will let you go ahead and start things off, though.
All right, so I'm trying to remember the last rumor we covered that was something from Special Nick, because I know that there was something else, and I'm pretty sure it was Microsoft related, and I think he was right about it too, which gives me more, I'm more inclined to believe this is true. The one thing I will say is that this seems likely that it would be true. The real question is, how long is this going to take? Because I cannot imagine that this is going to be anytime soon. I mean, I'm hoping that with it not being a live service game, because I think they've learned their lesson after Suicide Squad failed so miserably. I'm hoping that that means that it won't take nearly as long to develop because they're not doing the live service thing. But it's definitely something where, if it's true, it would be obviously the right move. It's just a question of, okay, is this true? Of course, then there's also the idea that Sony would be trying to money hat it. That I believe that one 100%. Because if this game is legitimate, Sony does this stuff all the time. So I absolutely believe they would do that. However, the one thing I will say is that it's highly likely that even if Sony is going to try to make this PlayStation exclusive, it's going to be on PC day and date, because it's not going to be a first-party game. And Sony's pattern so far has been, if it's not a first party game, if Sony's funding it, it comes to PC as well. With the exception of, well, anyway, I mean, I guess Stellar Blade technically that wasn't the case, but it seems like in general that's been more often than not. I don't know. Anyway, I do think that it would probably be day and date on PC, because I think that Sony recognizes that the market is just way too big to ignore, and while they can't get away with it with their first party games, at least not yet, because they're just going to slowly ease us into that, or ease the PlayStation fanboys into that, much like what Xbox did with their first party games. With a game like this, I think it's very likely that it would end up being PC day and date if it comes, and we're just gonna have to wait and see whether or not any of this is true. So, take it away.
Yeah, it does seem like it could definitely be true. I'm just hoping it's not true for... I'm really hoping it's not true, because for one thing, if Sony is backing this, as you said, it's going to be PlayStation and most likely PC only, which I despise, because even though I definitely would have a chance to play it, I know other gamers, those who play on Xbox, would not be able to play it. And, considering the fact that with the exception of Arkham Shadows, because that's going to be a VR game and Xbox doesn't have VR, with the exception of that game, every Arkham game has been on Xbox. Whether it's the 360, the One, the Series. I mean, granted, when Series it's just backwards compatible, but every Batman game every Arkham game has been on Xbox. So the fact that suddenly now it's not going to be on the Xbox platform, I have a problem with that. They definitely, Xbox gamers should be able to play the next Arkham game, even if it's not good. In the case of Suicide Squad, even if it's not good, they should still have the right to play a bad game. They should have the right to play the game. So I definitely have a problem with that if it is true and Sony makes it exclusive. I am very skeptical about how they could handle things with the next Arkham game, if they'll truly make things a return to form or not. Like you said, they probably definitely learned, or at least I hope they would have learned their lesson with Suicide Squad, and not try to make it live service, but then also hopefully they also learn their lesson, not try to push a message in it as well as deeply as they did with that game. But even despite that, I really cannot say that I trust Rocksteady at this point, because for one thing, pretty much all the developers who worked on the original Arkham games are gone. In fact, we mentioned this like months ago, that several of the original Rocksteady devs who founded Rocksteady, funny enough, are founding their own company. So, we don't have the original team there at all. And so who knows how things are going to go in that aspect. We don't know what the new team is going to do as far as the story is concerned. And also, we don't have Kevin Conroy either, which, I know that I've heard that he has recorded some lines before his passing, but even still, Roger Craig Smith did a good job with Batman in Arkham Origins, but I don't know. I just can't really see anyone else portraying him. Anyone else besides Kevin Conroy portraying him as Batman in an Arkham game, I should say. Like any game that isn't necessarily called Arkham, I feel is free reign. They had the Telltale Batman games when Kevin Conroy wasn't voicing him in that. So I don't know. I know we've talked about this before, especially with with Arkham Shadows first announced, and I don't know. Is it maybe too late at this point to make a new Arkham game? Because Arkham Knight came out in like what
15.
2015. So yeah, that's nearly 10 years ago. So I mean,
Yeah.
and considering the fact that, as you said, development, we don't know how long this new game would come out anyway. So I'm like, is it really worth making a new game, especially considering how Knight ended? And sure, we sort of know he wasn't dead, but considering it, like, I don't know. I mean, of course, if they do something like we sort of talked about before, if they had maybe say had it happen years later and they have like a Batman Beyond, that's something that they could do. That would be interesting. But I feel like if they're still going to keep it with Bruce Wayne, and I mean, I'm definitely hoping they'll do something like they have some other character stepping out. Like if they make Batwing, I am going to just flip my lid if they do that, because I already do not like the character as it is. But yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping this isn't real for multiple reasons, but I feel like it could possibly be real. But one thing that I will also add, though, just because that was interesting, is several years ago there was a rumor that Microsoft would possibly be buying WB Games, and I made a couple of videos about it because of the fact that there were Xbox fanboys saying that this would be good for Microsoft and having Batman be exclusive. And they were saying that I was wrong for not wanting PlayStation gamers to play it. And now we possibly have PlayStation gamers getting it, and the Xbox fanboys who were championing that it should be exclusive, might not be getting it anymore. So that's definitely interesting to see there. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say on the matter.
Yeah, I mean, I could also see it being like they would make it exclusive as a timed exclusive, and then they port it over to Xbox after that, or release it on Xbox, because with it being a third-party developer, even if PlayStation was largely responsible for the initial funding, it could very well just end up being that they basically say, we can't ignore this audience, and therefore we can do it temporarily exclusive, but not permanently. But I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see if this is even a real thing, and if it even comes out in the next decade, if it is real. So, all right. Well, I think we'll just cover one last topic tonight, since the other one doesn't really have as much to it, and I feel like we've kind of beaten that topic to death with the Horizon remaster. But Assassin's Creed Shadows. So there's been obviously a lot of backlash with this game for various reasons, between going with the mythical, I guess you could say, potentially historical character of Yasuke the Black Samurai. Whether or not he was a real character, a real person, we don't know all that, but various other things that people take issues with this game, and then of course the pricing structure and various other things. But Ubisoft has confirmed they decided to delay Assassin's Creed Shadows. So instead of coming exclusively to Ubisoft Connect, as well as PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, it is being delayed to February 14th of 2025. So it's coming out in Black History Month. And it is also coming to Steam and Epic Games Store, or at least I believe it's Epic Games as well. Let me double check on that. Looking at a couple tweets from both them and from Wario64. So another thing with this is that they are also departing from the traditional season pass model. All players will be able to enjoy the game at the same time on February 14th, and those who pre-order the game will be granted the first expansion for free. So let's see here. Let me look at what Ubisoft specifically says. I guess this is still just a screenshot. Yeah, so okay, it doesn't look like it's Epic Games Day 1, but it is on Steam Day 1, which is the first time that they put one of their mainline Assassin's Creed games on Steam Day 1 in many years. I honestly can't remember the last time they did that. So, what are your thoughts?
So it's definitely interesting that they brought the game out, or at least to bring it to Steam, and also interesting that they are canceling all pre-orders and refunding all pre-orders, and sort of changing their model, and also giving the people, or giving everyone the first expansion for free. It's also interesting that they delayed the game as well, which is interesting because I remember that they recently said they weren't going to show up at the Tokyo Game Show, and that they were canceling their appearance there. And we sort of know now we know why now, because of the fact that it's delayed. Honestly, to me, this just is all desperation from Ubisoft. I mean, their stocks were dropping like a stone recently, and they were calling to have the CEO replaced, or at least shareholders wanted to have the CEO replaced. So I feel like they're trying to do the best they can with sales of Shadow, especially considering the fact that Outlaws, didn't perform as they had anticipated. So they're really trying to just perform a Hail Mary and just like see if our gamble works, if we can delay the game. I mean, granted, I don't know the state of the performances. I don't know if there are any bugs, but if they were going to ship it out with technical issues, and then that definitely would really cripple their sales there if people were saying, hey, this game has so many bugs in it that it's just bad. So that could possibly be a reason as to why they are delaying it. I don't know if they could be also delaying it because they may or may not be altering. I mean, I don't know how much they can really even do considering the time frame they have, but maybe that might be altering some stuff, maybe within the story, which they say, oh, maybe we shouldn't do it. Maybe we should not put this in here because people might not like that. So, I mean, they might not completely remove everything, but they might alter some stuff here and there. And I mean, considering the fact that also one of the, I can't remember if this was a pre-order bonus or if this was some sort of merchandise or something like that they had, which was having one of the single arches, or this was like even like I think maybe like a Funko or something like that, some sort of figure. And I know there was definitely a lot of backlash because of that, because that was an actual thing in Japan, and it was related to the bombing of Hiroshima and stuff like that. So I know that definitely rubbed the Japanese community the wrong way there. So I don't know if they're also going to be working on something like that because of that there. So I don't know. This definitely just seems like desperation from Ubisoft. It's cool that they've brought it to Steam, but I feel like this is just something that they've done that's way too late, and they can flounder, but I really do not have any sympathy for them because they dug this pit that they've landed in, and they've been digging it for years with how they've released their games, not having their games on Steam, gradually, trying to cater to a modern audience. Their subscription services, they're in, of course, more recently with this in this year, having to pay $100+ for a version of a game, and it's just them really trying to regain the favor of gamers. But I do not know how well this is going to play out for them. But
this is just a side note because I think it's funny. So there's this official there's this screenshot of everything from Wario 64 talking about the delay, and some genius person responds, "Yote will keep us occupied. Fire emoji." And of course, the first response after that, Yote is after Shadows. Just like this guy's. Oh my goodness! I just face palmed so hard when I saw that. It's just like, wow, PlayStation fanboy who doesn't even pay attention. It's like they literally said this game is coming out in 2025, and then you're saying, "Oh yeah, Yote will keep us occupied while we wait for Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's probably coming out earlier." Because it's like, no, Ghost of Yote is probably going to be a fall or, it's going to be like late summer, early fall game. It's not going to be before Assassin's Creed Shadows. Oh, just fanboys.
What are you gonna do?
Okay. Anyway, so my thoughts on all of this. Obviously, I agree with what you said. They're floundering. They're trying to avoid having 2 bombs in 1 year because they know that this game is not that it's not going to sell, because of course it's going to sell, but it's going to do a lot worse. I mean, it's going to be bad enough that shareholders are not going to be happy with the reception if it comes out this year and they have 2 massive high budget games coming out the same year and not selling well. And of course then being broken and all that other stuff. Them releasing on Steam, it's like, well, how the turntables? They should have been doing this all along, because they still would have probably had some people buying from their launcher. I don't entirely have a problem with their launcher. Like, I have a bunch of games that I got through them. The only real reason I even started using their launcher was because of the fact that when Watch Dogs 2 came out, that was exclusive to their launcher. And I really wanted to play it on day one, and I'm glad I did, because it was a fantastic game. It was so much better than the first game. But they've just been... I don't mind their launcher, but these practices, especially the pricing for Star Wars Outlaws and now Assassin's Creed Shadows, it's just like, this is ridiculous what they're charging for this. And thankfully they decided to abandon the season pass model, and they're giving away the first DLC to people for free to people who pre-ordered the game. It's like, okay, that's reasonable incentive. I think that's actually pretty decent. Question is, what are they going to charge? But at least they're bringing it to Steam day one, and I think that's very good. I wish I could actually just transfer all of my Assassin's Creed licenses over to Steam without having to deal with their launcher, because then that would just be one less launcher, and it would be easier to play those games without having to do the run around adding the non-Steam game and still having to have the Ubisoft launcher installed and all that. That being said, I don't really know what else to say. I think it's obvious that this is something that they are planning to do. They did say that this game will mark the return of our new releases on Steam day one. So this is going to be going forward. All of their new releases are going to be on Steam day one. Of course, then that brings up the question: when are they going to bring some of the ones that haven't yet come to Steam, like Assassin's Creed Mirage, for example, and any others that they still have outstanding at this point. But yeah. That is all I got.
Same here.
All right. Well, as we close out this night, what are your recommendations?
So my recommendation is going to be pretty much what I did earlier this evening. So I recommend the Lord of the Rings films. Definitely watch them. They're brilliant films. They're great. I mean, there's a reason why that's, fans love those movies years later, and they definitely still hold up. And not necessarily, in even some degrees, some stuff might be slightly outdated with the CGI, but like a whole lot of stuff still looks phenomenal to this day, and it's just incredible what they did. And I mean, I'm even amazed that Fellowship of the Ring came out in the 90s. I mean, late 90s, of course, but you know, I was very surprised to know that it came out. You know, it came out.
No, it was filmed in the 90s. It
Okay,
came out
filmed
early
90s.
2000s.
Okay. But they're just still great films. You know, the writing is good. The actors do a great job. The score is phenomenal. Howard Shore, he put his heart into that score, and it really helps. I mean, every component of the film works so well with everything else that it made the trilogy a complete masterpiece. And you know, you don't even have to watch them all straight through like I did as a marathon. You can take your time, watch the films one at a time, but still, I just recommend those movies because they're incredible. And you know, definitely watch them. Even if you just watch, say, the theatrical version, definitely watch them.
For sure. Indeed. All right, so I have a few recommendations. First of all, I'm going to recommend God of War Ragnarok 2018 as well, since that's part of it. I mean, really, I would just recommend those new ones, especially if you haven't played the older God of War games. Just definitely don't stick to the story alone. Do side stuff, because that's really where the game has a lot more to it. I mean, where the battles are harder and that sort of thing, and it's a good challenge than all the Metroidvania stuff. It's just. But anyway, specifically within God of War Ragnarok and 2018 for that matter, use your shield to block what you can. Don't be stupid like me and go through years of playing these games and barely use my shield for anything other than trying to parry attacks. Actually block the attacks when you can, because it will help you survive a lot better. My last recommendation is going to be play Outer Wilds. Play it on any platform where you can play it. The Switch version, though it does have a much lower frame rate than playing it on the Steam Deck or on consoles for the most part, it's still just a great game, and it doesn't need a high frame rate. It's the kind of game where you can absolutely get away with a lower frame rate. It won't be as smooth, but it's fine. And there's no combat or anything like that. It's just primarily using your jetpack and that sort of thing to maneuver and your ship and that sort of thing. So controls are a little hard to get used to at first, but once you get used to them, they feel pretty natural. But yeah, that's what I got for recommendations.
Nice.
Dissuasion.
So my dissuasion is to not, and this is primarily if you are working with projects or any sort of computer project, or even if it's not a computer project, but it could be something that you're just working on in general. Do not delete a project file unless you're 100% certain that, and even then, make sure you're 120% certain that you don't need it anymore. So I was going to work on making a video, and I wanted to feature a clip from an older video I had made. However, I later learned that I had deleted that video. I don't know when, but I had deleted that video sometime before now, and I went through several different archive drives I had. I did not have it, and then I realized I was pretty much stuck. Fortunately, I mean, it wasn't going to be the same, but I downloaded the video from the YouTube creator, and that I got it that way. But if I did not have that, I would not have had a video to download at all. So definitely make sure that you definitely know that you will not ever need any sort of project file again. Otherwise, you might be kicking yourself in the butt much later when you realize that I really wish I had this.
Yep, definitely a good one. All right, well, I have a couple of dissuasions. First of all is regarding playing God of War Ragnarok on the Steam Deck. Make sure, I should say, do not keep yourself connected to Wi-Fi if you are going to be leaving your Wi-Fi network. So when you log in, when you start up the game initially, you want to make sure you're connected to Steam so that you can get logged in properly. But after that, go in offline mode on the Steam Deck, and that way you don't have to worry about issues with the buttons not working. So do not keep yourself online the whole time unless you know for sure you're going to be staying in the network the whole time. And I thought I had something else written down. Oh, you know what? I think I started typing it and I just forgot to finish it. Give me 1 second. I wrote it down. I just didn't finish typing it in the description here. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, the other thing is, my other dissuasion with this is, do not go into God of War Ragnarok on the Steam Deck expecting the performance to be great at all times. So, as long as you go in recognizing that you will have times where the frame rate's going to drop, you'll be fine. You just have to be aware it's not going to stay at 40 frames all the time. You probably can't even maintain 30 really, at least not at all times. So don't go into it expecting to maintain that. All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. I put out a couple videos this past week. The first one was just talking about my disdain for games that have a lot of farming or intensive farming, because you are just trying to grind needlessly and for long periods of time. And then the other video was sort of also just my another take on me discussing the Batman Arkham game possibly coming out. But yeah, that's all that I've done now. I might have something coming out later this week, but I am not 100% certain, but we will see what happens there.
Sounds good. All right, well, you can find me on my gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. That's on YouTube. I did finally put out some more content. For starters, I put out some clips from this podcast, just in hopes that that will kind of draw a bit more attention both to the channel itself for some commentary videos as well as to the podcast. So far, not really much of any views, so that's fine. I'll still probably do it. I think what I'll be doing is when I'm editing the podcast, I'll make sure I mark off the sections and then I can put them in separate sequences so that I can more easily get those clips up and uploaded. I'm hoping to just keep doing that here on out because that's not difficult to do, and it's like I've already done the editing. All I really have to do is render and then upload and then make up a thumbnail. But I think that'll be a good thing for some of our more interesting discussions on specific topics. So there's that. I did finally put out another comparison, so that is for the Outer Wilds between the Steam Deck OLED and the Switch OLED. Go check that out, of course. Then I also have my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. And I just put out a new video today, actually, and that is for my recipe for salsa con queso, otherwise known as nacho cheese. This is nacho cheese that does not include any Velveeta, any seed oils, any weird fake oils. It's all real ingredients, but it's still really creamy with real cheese in it. It's good stuff. I do have more recipes that are planned to go up. I have, I think, 3 full recipes that are ready to go, other than 2 of them I need to add voiceover because I couldn't do the voiceover when I was recording them, which is and then One of them is it just needs to be put together. And then my last recipe, the Japanese curry breakfast burrito that I talked about putting up, I was going to do that, but I realized that I looked really grungy for both the taste test and the intro for the video, so I'm just going to have to redo those portions, which, I mean, it's not all that complicated. It won't require much of any time. It's basically just I'm going to be making some more Japanese curry after I'm able to get the stuff I need for it, and then I will refilm those portions, and then we'll be good to go on that one, because I really want to put that one up. It's just like the presentation is just really bad, and it's like I can't. That's not acceptable. The rest of it's fine, because the rest of it's all you see are my hands and the food, and that stuff's all great. It's just the portions where you actually see me on camera that are awful, and I can't. It's not good enough for me. So anyway, otherwise, in addition to those channels, of course, we have the channel for the podcast, the video version of the podcast. So if you are listening to the audio only version of this podcast, which comes out every Friday, 12 a.m. Central Time, that is on all major podcast platforms. That includes YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, and various other platforms. We also have a video version that is on our YouTube channel, at the Orange Box Podcast, and there you can see not only our beautiful faces, but you can also see gameplay clips from the games we've been playing. If we talk about various games that have been recently revealed or announced, we'll typically have some clips from those as well, including this time we will have clips from the PlayStation State of Play that just aired, so we'll definitely have plenty of stuff there to look at if you haven't had a chance to check those things out. And the video version also comes out on Fridays, but at 7 a.m. Central Time on that YouTube channel. Of course, you can contact us either by commenting on the video, or you can send us an email, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet us at theorangeboxpod. So that is it. Last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, say goodnight to the bad guy on the loose. Orange Box Podcast, out.